It was a dark and stormy night when the Walmart in our town closed down. The winds howled like a pack of wolves, and the rain beat against the windows like 100 angry fists. And as the last customer left the store, the door shut with a final thud. Nobody knew why the Walmart had closed down. Some said it was because of poor management or the lack of sales. Others claimed it was haunted. The locals whispered about strange happenings at the store, unexplained noises, mysterious shadows, and eerie whispers that could be heard in the dead of night. As the weeks passed, the rumors grew more and more. People said they had seen ghostly figures wandering the aisles, that strange symbols had been etched into the walls, and that the store's shelves had been rearranged overnight by some unseen force. The police investigated, but they found no evidence of foul play. They concluded that the store had simply gone bankrupt and closed down. But the rumors persisted, and people continued to talk about the store's sinister secrets. One night, a group of teenagers decided to investigate the abandoned store. Armed with flashlights and nerves of steel, they broke in through the back door and began to explore the dark, deserted aisles. At first, everything seemed normal. The shelves were empty, and the floor was covered in a layer of dust. But as they made their way deeper into the store, they began to notice something strange. The air grew colder and thicker, as if they were walking through a dense fog. The sound of their footsteps echoed loudly through the empty store, and their flashlights began to flicker and dim. Suddenly, one of the teenagers cried out in terror. They had seen something moving in the shadows. At first, they thought it was just their imagination, but then they saw it again, a flicker of movement in the corner of their eye. Panic set in, and the group began to run towards the exit. But as they approached the doors, they found them blocked by an invisible force. They pushed and pulled, but the doors would not budge. It was then that they realized that they were trapped. The store had come alive, and it was determined to keep them there. As the hours ticked by, the teenagers huddled together in fear. They heard strange noises, like whispers and moans coming from the darkness. They saw shadowy figures moving just out of sight, and felt icy fingers brush against their skin. As dawn approached, they were finally able to force their way out of the store, but they were never the same again. They told their story to anyone that would listen, and the legend of the haunted Walmart grew even stronger. Years went by, and the store remained abandoned. Nobody dared to enter the doors for fear of what lurked within. But then, one day, a new owner came to town. They bought the old Walmart and began to renovate it, determined to bring new life to the once thriving store. It was supposed to be an ordinary night shift at Walmart. I had worked there for years and had never experienced anything out of the ordinary, but that night, everything changed. As I was doing my routine inventory check, I noticed that the store had gotten unusually quiet. There were no customers, no other employees, and even the usual background noise of the store had disappeared. I looked up from my work, scanning the store for any sign of movement, but all I saw were the empty aisles, the rows of merchandise, and the silent checkout lines. I tried to shake off the feeling of unease and continued with my work, but the silence was deafening. As I made my way towards the back of the store, I heard a faint whisper. Well, at first, I thought it was just my imagination, but as I listened closer, I realized that it was a voice. It was coming from the end of the aisle, but I could not make out what was being said. I cautiously walked towards the end of the aisle, trying to make out the words, but as I got closer, the voice grew louder, and I realized that it wasn't a human voice at all. It was a low guttural growl, and it was coming from one of the shelves. I slowly reached for the item, trying to figure out what could be making such a noise. But as I touched it, The growling grew louder, and I realized that I had made a terrible mistake. The shelf was filled with a strange, unknown substance. It was writhing and pulsing, and I could feel its cold, slimy tendrils wrapping around my arm. I tried to pull away, but it was too late. The creature had me in its grip, and it was dragging me towards the shelf. I screamed for help, but there was no one to hear me. The store was empty, and I was alone. As I struggled to break free, the creature dragged me into the shadows, and I could feel its cold, clammy breath on my neck. I could hear its growling, and I knew that I was in grave danger. I fought with all my might, trying to break free from its grip, but the creature was too strong, and it was dragging me deeper into the darkness. And suddenly, I felt a sharp pain in my arm, and I knew that I had been injected with something. My vision started to blur, and I could feel myself slipping away. I tried to stay conscious, but it was too late. The creature had won, and I was trapped. When I woke up, I was in a small, cramped room. There was no light, no sound, and I couldn't move. As my eyes adjusted to the darkness, I realized that I was not alone. There was something else in the room with me, lurking in the shadows. I could hear its breathing, and I could feel its eyes on me. I knew that it was the creature from the store, and it had come to finish me off. For hours, I lay there, trapped in the darkness, waiting for the creature to make its move, but it never did. Instead, it just watched me, lurking in the shadows, waiting for the right moment to strike. Days turned into weeks, and I lost all track of time. I didn't know how long I had been trapped in the room, but I knew that I was slowly losing my mind. Every time I closed my eyes, I could feel the creature's cold breath on my neck. Every time I tried to move, I could feel its slimy tendrils wrapping around me. I knew I needed to escape, but I didn't know how. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, I heard a faint sound outside the door. It was the sound of someone fumbling with a lock. As the door creaked open, I shielded my eyes from the sudden light. When I opened them again, I saw a group of police officers standing in the doorway. They rushed in towards me, freeing me from the restraints that had been holding me captive. And as they helped me to my feet, I realized that the creature from the Walmart had disappeared. The police searched the store, but they found no trace of the creature. It was as if it never existed. I was taken to the hospital, where I spent several weeks recovering from my ordeal. It took me a long time to come to terms with what had happened, but eventually, I started to feel like myself again. To this day, I have no idea what the creature in the Walmart was or where it came from, but one thing is for sure, I will never forget the terror I felt that night, trapped in the store with something lurking in the shadows. It was just another night at Walmart. I had been working there for a few months now, and it was usually pretty uneventful, but that night was different. As the end of my shift approached, I finished up my final tasks and headed towards the front of the store to clock out. But as I reached the doors, I realized that they were locked. I tried the other doors, but they were all locked too. It was as if the entire store had been sealed off from the outside world. I started to panic. I was trapped in the store with no way out. I tried to call for help, but my phone had no signal inside the store. As I walked around the store, trying to figure out what to do, I noticed something strange. The merchandise on the shelves had been moved all around, as if someone had been in the store after hours. I started to feel uneasy. I knew that Walmart had strict security measures in place, and no one should have been able to get in after hours. But as I continued to explore the store, I realized that the security cameras had been disabled. It was as if someone had purposely shut them off. Suddenly, I heard a noise coming from the back of the store. It was a faint scratching sound, like someone was dragging something heavy across the floor. I cautiously made my way towards the source of the noise, trying to stay quiet so as to not alert whoever or whatever was making the sound. As I got closer, the scratching sound grew louder. I could hear heavy breathing. My heart raced as I rounded the corner and saw it. There was a figure in the shadows, hunched over and dragging something large and heavy across the floor. I could not make out any features, but I knew that it wasn't human. I tried to run, but my legs wouldn't move. I was frozen in fear, staring at the figure as it slowly made its way towards me. Suddenly, the lights in the store flickered, and the figure disappeared. I was all alone again, trapped in the store with no way out. I tried to stay calm, but the fear was overwhelming. I was convinced that I was going to die in that store, alone and afraid. Hours passed, and the sun started to rise. The store remained locked, and there was still no way out. As I sat on the floor, feeling hopeless, I noticed something odd. The merchandise on the shelves had been rearranged again, but this time, it was in the shape of a message. The message read, "You're not alone." I shuddered with fear, realizing that I was not the only one in the store. There was someone or something else with me, watching my every move. Suddenly, I heard a noise coming from the front of the store. It was a faint tapping sound, like someone was trying to get in. I got up and I rushed towards the sound, hoping that it was help. But as I got closer, I realized that it wasn't someone trying to get in. It was someone trying to get out. I saw a figure in the window, pounding at the glass and screaming for help. But as I got closer, I realized that it wasn't a person at all. It was a mannequin, dressed in Walmart clothing, placed there purposely to scare me. I realized that I was being toyed with. Someone had locked me in the store and was playing a sick game with me. I tried to keep my wits about me, but the fear was too much to bear. I was convinced that I was going to die in that store, and that no one would ever find my body. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the store manager arrived to open the doors. I stumbled out the doors, exhausted and terrified. The police were waiting outside too, and they took my statement. They searched the store, but they found no evidence of anyone else being inside. I quit my job at Walmart that day and never looked back. I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was still watching me, even when I was alone. The months went by, and I tried to move on with my life, but the memories of that night still haunted me. I could not shake the feeling that I was being watched, even when I was alone in my own home. One night, as I was getting ready for bed, I heard a noise coming from outside my window. It was a faint tapping sound, like someone was trying to get in. I rushed to the window, hoping that it was just a branch or something harmless. But as I peered out into the darkness, I saw something that made my blood run cold. There, standing outside my window, it was the same mannequin that had been in the Walmart. It was dressed in the same Walmart clothing, and it was staring directly at me. I screamed and ran from the room, but when I returned, the mannequin was gone. I searched the yard, but there was no sign of anyone or anything. I knew that I was being stalked, and that whoever or whatever had locked me in the Walmart was still out there, watching and waiting. I never found out who was behind it all, but the memories of that night still haunt me to this day. I will never forget the terror I felt, trapped in the store with something lurking in the shadows, and the fear that followed me home.